How are we doing, pirates? Before we get into our questions with Module 2, brand positioning, there were a couple questions about the case, and I figured even though I answered the one student, it'd probably be a good idea to make sure we have everybody on the same page. So question number 1. When you are working on your case and working on your write-up, I actually want you to respond to each one of these questions individually. Use the question as a header. In other words, I'm going to grade all the question 1s before I get to all the question 2s, before I get to all the question 3s. And if you have the question as a header, it's easier for me to jump around amongst the documents. Please do not respond to the case in one long essay response and then the answer choices bleed into each other. You're responding to each one of these questions individually. Okay? The other item that I wanted to get out to everyone with regards to the case is look at question 4. Throughout this course, a number of interesting brand-related strategies, meaning anything we talked about in the articles, the multiple articles you read throughout the semester, are presented, including brand communities, brand mapping. I actually pulled the Red Blue Oceans article. When I taught this class last time, the class was longer. The class was 2 weeks longer. So I had to remove one of the modules. And in order to remove one of the modules, the Red Blue Oceans article kind of disappeared. But there are multiple things that we talked about throughout the semester, including the brand communities, brand mapping, and others. As the VP of marketing, select one of these 3 or one of these 2 or anything else we talked about this semester that you think is most valuable for Tela. Okay? Let me hit pause for 1 second. Okay, folks, let's get to our questions. But before we get into the questions, let's just talk a little bit about where we've been week 1, week 2, module 1, module 2. In module 1, we wanted to define what a brand is, or how do we define a brand. Throughout the articles, they gave you multiple definitions. I gave you my definition of a mental shortcut. And more than anything else, in week 1, we talked about traditional brand management, where the brand manager thinks that he or she is in charge and can tell you, the crowd, what brand meaning is. And then we got a cultural model, which is more in the present bottom-up world that we live in at the moment. That was Doug Holt. We were talking about, the brands and how brands become icons, and this cultural model. I am very much in the cultural model camp just because of the life and times that we live in at the moment. Now, regardless of which brand model you're going to pick, okay, one of the main things you need to do is tell your audience or your crowd how your brand is different than the other brands in the same category. This is particularly important in a category that is competitive, somewhat zero-sum, where the only way you're going to get more revenue is by taking away sales from one of your competitors. And a lot of the examples that we had in our questions and your topic talks fits very much into this category. So positioning your brand within the marketplace so that you have this unique position is really important. Jill gave us a very long, detailed article and a number of ways for us to think about this. I have some notes. I'm just going to blurt a few of them real quick. I love this idea of a positioning map. So you can actually graph and visually see how you are different versus the other brands in the same market. You could do an axis of quality, low versus high, and price, low versus high, and then you would get 4 boxes. High quality, high price, low quality, low price, and then a mix of the other two. And you could map the other brands, right? We talked a lot about the value proposition. We talked about the unique selling proposition. Although these two terms are different, they're very much in spirit similar in nature. But one of the things, and we're going to talk about USPs in your questions here, if you do not have a well-defined USP, it's going to be harder for you to have a unique position in the marketplace vis-a-vis your competition. Now, I love the 3 C's model. I love those 4 questions of who, where, when, value, who, how, and exactly that was outlined in the article. But before we get into the questions, I have one last thing that I wanted to blurt here. And this is not in the article. I don't know how controversial this is, but it's something that I hear entrepreneurs say a lot. I hear it many times on the entrepreneurship podcast that I listen to. But think about this for a second. It's better to be different than it is to actually be better. Let me repeat that. It's better to be different than it is to actually be better. So you might have higher quality or you might have more value, but someone will sell more of a similar product if they do a better job of telling the crowd how they are different than everyone else. Because higher quality and bad messaging will not increase your sales. Sometimes, many times, it's better to be different than it is to be better. And I think that kind of encapsulates a lot of the conversation that's going on in Module 2 on brand positioning. All right, let's get into some of our questions here. We have Professor Leo leading us off. Leo, you have a great name. It's what I named one of my sons. When it comes to the reading, can you explain more about the additional challenges a brand manager would have when repositioning the identity of a brand? Well, there's one main challenge, and it's a colossal challenge. And the colossal challenge is when we talk about the identity of the brand. In Jill's article, she talked multiple times about mind share. Okay? How do you change someone's mind? It's their thoughts and their mind. They have images tattooed in their head. Okay? For instance, if we wanted to talk about European cities, and I am the brand manager for Tourism France, and I want to talk about Paris, as soon as I say the word Paris, the icon of the Eiffel Tower immediately pops up in your head. You cannot avoid it. You cannot avoid it. But if I'm the brand manager for France and I want to talk about Paris and I really want to bring in all the gardens and the art museums, I have a harder road to travel because the identity that's already burned in and branded in everyone's mind is that Eiffel Tower. That is the biggest challenge. Can you change the narrative or the conversation amongst the crowd in the direction that is more beneficial for you? That is a colossal challenge. It is very difficult to do. All right, we have Professor Kelly. She has a couple questions. Building on the concept of gender bending that was described in the article, have you noticed cases of brands trying to reposition themselves over the last year in light of racial equity? Yes. And prior to hashtag BLM, we had hashtag MeToo. Is it even more complicated than gender bending? I think both are challenging for the same reasons we talked about up here in this article. We have to change the conversation about race in the United States. Oh, hold on. Let me pause for 1 second. Pause. When BLM and the movement was happening in the middle of pandemic last year, and it was the central conversation in the United States, even over above COVID for the better part of last summer, I was questioning myself, and I wanted to make sure that I brought more of this conversation into class. Because although I am in support of everything, it's not like I was one who was the first one to speak up and talk about it first thing. If students brought topic talks in, or there was questions at the beginning of class, I certainly entertained the questions, and we certainly had a dialogue about it. But I did not have BLM or a lot of the other equity conversations top priority at the beginning of class. I was thinking about my class and the syllabus. So I wanted to change that framework. And I thought, well, I was going for a walk. I was in Massachusetts at the time, actually, walking through a friend's neighborhood. And I just saw this sign. In this house, we believe Black Lives Matter. Women's rights are human rights. No human is illegal. Science is real. Love is love is love is love. And kindness is everything. And I just thought that if I started the semester with this, and this was the first thing that we talked about at the beginning of the semester, before we even did the syllabus, that these conversations, I'm signaling that they're welcomed. I'm signaling that I want to talk about them. I'm signaling that I am very much open and supportive of these conversations. I made 2 copies of this. One is on the door of my office now. So but even before you walk into my office, this is the first thing you see on the outside of my door. It is not easy to change the conversation. It's something that has to be rewired in all our brains over time. Regardless of gender, any of these conversations. All right, we have Professor Ashley making sure I'm recording. Yes. Question. In section 2.5 of the article, there's a large discussion about brand repositioning. Now, there's another part of the article, and a number of you had it in your topic talk, about the word evolve. No brand can ever be static. I mean, if we turn the clock back 120 years, there was a lot of horse and carriage companies out there. Trolley cars were a thing. There was no brand repositioning that could help horse and carriage or trolley cars. Okay? The category was going to disappear. But there are many products that the category doesn't disappear, but the conversation around that brand or that category shifts. And if you don't update your positioning vis-a-vis the competition around you, you're going to have a problem and you will become irrelevant. In section 2.51, it discusses balancing consistency and change. When a firm is undergoing a brand repositioning, what do you believe is the best method to balance the two? Let's take a perfect example of Campbell Soup. Campbell Soup's color scheme and label is iconic. It is probably one of the most recognized brands in the United States. Okay. Now, Campbell every so often gets themselves into trouble by modifying the label too far. And when they modify things too far, they actually see their sales drop because people in the supermarket aisle are not recognizing what it is. So this is a simple example of balancing consistency and change. Campbell has to evolve. But at the same time, they can't go so radical that people will not recognize or not quickly recognize that it's still Campbell Soup chicken noodle soup. Now, there are brands that we saw during BLM, to go back to this conversation. I mean, Aunt Jemima is no longer appropriate. There, a more radical change needs to happen. A stronger repositioning should occur. So what is the best methods to balance the two? Well, baby steps with regards to icons. We have a Coca-Cola topic talk coming up here, but Coca-Cola, when they go too radical, too fast, they have issues. And then when you have digital brands like a Facebook or a Twitter, and they make a radical instead of a gradual change, what happens? There's a petition, and people are leaving the platform, and then all of a sudden Zuckerberg's on someone's couch on the morning talk shows apologizing that they overstepped. That's what happens in the bottom-up world if the crowd is not happy with your actions. All right, we have Professor Madison, and she is asking, is it possible to reposition a brand too many times? No. Is there a scenario where a brand has repositioned too much that the consumers lost interest? There are multiple scenarios where the brand management team did not do a good job of positioning the brand vis-a-vis competition in a highly competitive marketplace. And therefore, it's not that they lost interest, it's just that consumers don't have the USP for that brand. Let's look at the fast food market, right? Now, McDonald's is the number one player in this space. No ifs, ands, or buts. McDonald's has evolved since even just in the last 10 years, they've evolved. Okay? Messing with the menu, improving what the restaurants look inside. McDonald's got repositioned by the Chipotles of the world and the Paneras of the world, and all of a sudden that cheap furniture and the cheap fast food, it looked nasty there. And even though Panera, price point wise, was only $2 or $3 more, when you walked into McDonald's, everything looked so cheap. Panera applied pressure to McDonald's that McDonald's had to up their game, and they went through a $12 billion store remodeling. You walk into a McDonald's, and a McDonald's looks pretty good, especially compared to the other competitors in the fast food market that did not evolve the way McDonald's did. So I don't think it's impossible to reposition a brand too many times, because you have to stay, or you have to continually find that USP. And in some marketplaces that move really quickly, you might be doing it, 2, 3, 4 times in a 3-4 year period. That's kind of where we're at the moment. Questions. Is it ever truly too little too late when it comes to repositioning a brand? I don't think so. I really don't. Should a brand like Victoria's Secret choose to completely overhaul their brand with a new name so they could start over, or will a new spokesman or commitment be better work? Okay. Let's go back to this one. Again, no brand position in a competitive marketplace will last forever. If you don't evolve and you don't shift and you don't tweak, competition around you will make your USP irrelevant. So when it comes to repositioning, I think you have to continually reposition yourself vis-a-vis your competition. If you don't stay ahead of them, they will catch you or match you or make your current position irrelevant. And then what? There was a time period, you guys are all too young. There was a time period where Heineken was the number one imported brand in the United States. And for the better part of 2 decades, their entire advertising campaign was, we don't need fancy models or fancy this or like that. It's just best to be the best. Heineken, the number one selling beer in the United States. Well, as soon as Corona overtook their position as the number one selling beer in the United States, Heineken has yet to come up with a new position in the United States. I'm not talking about Europe. I'm talking about in the United States, to battle back against Corona. They haven't done it. Now, to get to Megan's question about Victoria's Secret's brand still has enough cachet that I would not do a name change here. I think their first step in repositioning and going away from the, I don't even want to talk about it here on camera and what they used to do in the past compared to more body positivity that they're heading for in the future, I think this could work. I really think this could work. Especially given that Victoria's Secret already did some of the hard work during the pandemic. They closed a lot of underperforming stores. They slimmed lines down to the point where they're simplifying the number of SKUs in the store. Not only the repositioning, they got the supply chain and getting the brand healthy, getting the company healthy again as a whole nother thing. I don't think they should do a name change. I don't think Victoria's Secret is in such bad shape that they have to kill the brand in order to save the company. And I'm very curious to see if this new position will work. I bet you they're going to give it like a 3 to 6 month window. This is the fall and holiday shopping period through December. If they don't see a major shift, probably by November, December, we'll see a new effort or new positioning, a new something starting the new year next year. Okay, we have Professor Vic. He asks, if a company has a market position that they do not like, but it is profitable, this is a good question. Should the company embrace that position and work to strengthen it, or is it better to try to reposition? Oh boy. I'm assuming when you say do not like, but it is profitable, I come at this from like an ethics perspective. I think of gambling companies, I think of tobacco companies, I think of, predatory casinos. Should they embrace the position and work to strengthen it, or is it better to try to position? I mean, there are a lot of companies that they only have one bottom line, and it is the bottom line between black and red, and that is the only bottom line. And if that's the case, then guess what? They're going to stay there to strengthen it, even if they don't like it. There are other companies that have a triple bottom line. And we're going to do a whole CSR branding module. It's our last module this semester, right? Where we talk about being profitable, bottom line number 1, being environmentally conscious, bottom line number 2, and being socially conscious, bottom line number 3. And you answer to all 3 bottom lines. So I think it's really a function of the company. I don't know. All right, we have Professor Oren. And Professor Oren asks, should marketing be the sole responsibility of other departments, regardless of the line of work, to ensure that all departments within the organization contribute in some way to the marketing strategy of the organization, its brand, and its products? So in Oren's topic talk, he was explicitly talking about the problems that are, in order to reposition, they can't just reposition and do a fancy advertising campaign. We need the product to change. We need engineering in the supply chain and operations, and we need the resources from accounting and finance, and we need the management to buy in. Okay? Now, if this was my other class, we probably would have had 4 or 5 modules on marketing management. This is just the branding class. Okay? The other class, there's just one branding module in 10 modules, and 3 or 4 of them are brand management, marketing strategy. To make the long story short, it's the marketing department's responsibility to provide the data for the shift in the positioning that is needed across the entire corporation. Can marketing tell other departments what to do? No. The company as a whole and the C-suite has to decide. It really has to be some kind of a top-down strategy and structure. If it's something that's so important that's going to go across multiple functional areas beyond the marketing department. I mean, if it's just If it's just, okay, changing a color scheme and the label and that's it, the ingredients stay the same, the supply chain stay the same, and everything else stays the same, well, then marketing is the sole responsibility. But in reality, if, McDonald's wants to update their menu, McDonald's can't just update their menu. They need to go to operations, and they need to go to the supply chain, and they need to get new suppliers, and they need to get better product, and they need to get, there's a lot more involved. All right, we have Professor Kelsey, and she is asking, how do irrelevant attributes harm a brand's reposition process? Well, anything that can cloud the story, anything that could prevent that unique selling proposition message, those irrelevant attributes, those things that could interfere with that identity forming, singular, safe, unique position in someone's head, that hurts. That really hurts. I mean, if we think about a movie, right? And there are 4 or 5 actors and actresses in the movie, and one of the actors is playing a priest in this new movie, yet in a previous movie he was a homicidal satanic murderer. Okay, it could be the case that what we think of that one actor going forward and now as a priest might interfere with the positioning of that movie and us being able to accept the actor in that role. That's something that you test. Hollywood does lots of screen tests, and there's a good reason. Marketing does a lot of marketing research. You test. Or we go to the social media listening tools, and we go out and we listen for brand sentiment. Or we dialogue with our fans at a Comic-Con or some kind of brand event, or on our newsletter, or on our Twitter handle, and we have a dialogue and a conversation to see where it's going to go before we go all in. All right, we have a couple of more questions here. We have Professor Nick. Professor Nick asks, one of the important questions asked in the reading is what value the repositioning adds. In the case of Domino's, it creates an alternative food exchange method that promotes using mobile-first activation, i.e. Domino's really doesn't want to waste time in there saying, okay, hello, what do you want? Pizza, pepperoni? No. They want you to do all the ordering digitally. And then the order comes in digitally, they do the order, it helps speeds things up, it helps reduce communication, i.e. the native app. All right. And they're doing some kind of a DraftKings promo with regards to also having DraftKings promo Domino's within. But what's crazy in Nick's topic talk is DraftKings actually providing odds on the over and under if they're going to be able to deliver within 30 minutes or not. Something like that. Oh, that seems a little weird. But also does not conflict with Domino's bread and butter, which is that of delivery. Domino's did a very good job a gazillion years ago with their positioning, that USP and pizza fast, pizza hot, 30 minutes or less, or it's free. That is a very clear message. It's pizza fast, pizza hot. Pizza fast, pizza hot. Notice, no part of that positioning is pizza good. Just saying. Pizza fast, pizza hot. Okay, got it. Pizza fast, pizza hot. Not pizza good. No. But they were never trying to be in that part of the marketplace. Quality was not their thing. Speed and convenience was their thing. That was their value proposition. That was part of their USP that they did in their advertising. Pizza fast, pizza hot. Professor Matt asks, do you think that this athletic leisure Lululemon company positioning in the market leaves it vulnerable to companies like Lululemon that could ride lower prices. So Lululemon is, without question, the leader in the athletic leisure marketplace. They have the strongest brand, they have the highest prices, they have the highest margin. Lululemon is the quote-unquote Mercedes-Benz of athletic leisure clothing. Okay? This Kate Hudson startup is in the same marketplace as Lululemon, but they are a much more affordable option versus Lululemon. Matt is asking, whoa, do you think the company would have a dramatic impact if it, can Lululemon, well, part of the question is, can Lululemon just drop price and knock this company out of the marketplace? And the answer is no. Lululemon cannot drop price. It would be the equivalent of, okay, let's go buy a Mercedes because we want to buy a Mercedes. But this Mercedes is only $29,000. Well, if it's $29,000, which is less than a Honda Accord, is it really a Mercedes? And then, they do make a lower price Mercedes, what happens to the real Mercedes? The $85,000 S-Class. Do you hurt your brand when all of a sudden, you have that $85,000 buyer of an S-Class and they look over and see a $29,000 C-Class and they go, oh, my car's not that special anymore. Anybody can buy a Mercedes. And Mercedes has had this problem in the past. They keep trying to go down market and it's always been a failure on multiple fronts. Now, BMW tried to go down lower market. Again, it was a failure. And they finally gave up and they just bought Mini. They did the marketing research. Mini was the entry-level BMW. Pretty much, a third of all Mini customers then bought a 3 Series after buying a Mini. They just bought Mini. And all of a sudden, you had a sporty, kind of good car in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. And then BMW didn't have to have a $35,000 BMW or $32,000 BMW. They had Mini. I don't think Lululemon's going to go down brand. They might buy another brand to fight against this company, or they might just try to stay super premium. It depends on where the market's going. But I don't see Lululemon coming up with a cheaper line just to compete with. I don't see that happening. There's too much downside risk. All right, Professor Sam asks, the 3 C's were mentioned as a way to diagnose your company's unique selling proposition. Yet it seemed, though, your brand wouldn't meet all the themes of the C. So, I don't know about that, Sam. Basically, the 3 C's are a way for you to help you do the analysis, kind of like a SWOT analysis, determine what your you do the SWOT to determine what your strategy should be. You do the 3 C's to determine what your USP should be. Because basically you're looking at customer analytics, competition data, and then company internal data. And what's happening out there in the marketplace amongst customers, what's happening out there in the marketplace amongst competition, what's happening internally within our own company, and based on what consumers think and what our competitors are doing and our capabilities as a company, can we have a unique position in the market that maximizes our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to our company? That's kind of how, in my head, how this analysis works out. Now, does that mean that we have perfect data on customers, or we have perfect data on competition, or we really have the capabilities to do exactly what we should be doing internally as a company? No. But you're going to optimize on all 3 of those C's, and you're going to do your best. All right, we have Professor Aaron, and we are finally talking about Coke. Okay, let me hit pause. I'm going to do a commercial. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. This right here, and please forgive me for saying it this way, but it's like liquid crack. This is a sugarcane Coca-Cola. Now, just because it's in a glass jar doesn't mean it's a sugarcane Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola makes a lot of high fructose corn syrup Coca-Colas in a glass jar. You actually have to look. It needs to say cane sugar. And some of the other things, other ways that you can see that it is a cane sugar, any kosher Coca-Cola are always cane sugar. Most Mexican Coca-Colas are cane sugar. Oh my God, does this taste amazing. To the point where you can't drink this every day. I mean, you can't. A, it's full sugar, full calories. And B, it's just ridiculous. I save these in my refrigerator for like Don Cool rum and cokes on the weekend. That's here we go. This is it. This is it. You can't get any better than this. You really can't. I mean, you can't. All right, commercial's over. So let's talk about this highly competitive marketplace of soda, where you're constantly shifting your USP because there's so many brands around it. So Aaron asks, Professor Aaron asks, I personally believe that iconic brands such as Coca-Cola shouldn't try to reposition a product. Right? Aaron, they have to every so often because competition around them is eating them up. I mean, broadly speaking, we rarely see Coke ads anymore. We see Diet Coke ads and Coke Zero ads. Because over the last 10 years, everybody got healthier and water's a more popular thing than cola is. And people are drinking healthier. So you can't advertise straight up Pepsi and straight up Coke the way they used to advertise straight up Pepsi and straight up Coke. They can't do it anymore. So they have to. Okay? So they are confusing themselves in the marketplace. Coke Zero, Diet Coke, Coke Zero Sugar. Ooh, they need to do a better job with their USP to signal to the audience to make sure that we have a mental shortcut, the difference between Diet Coke and Zero Sugar Coke. Do you believe this is a classic case of don't fix what's broken? No, I think it's a classic case of you need to stay ahead of where consumers' mind share is and your competition is, because those two things are dynamic and the marketplace is continually shifting. Do you think that the brand just draws negative attention every time they attempt to rebrand because of the new Coke branding in the 80s, and this makes brand branding for them more difficult? I think this was a classic new Coke, classic Coke case study that was more of a one-off. Coke has been much more consistent and significantly tweaking after this, and they did not do it on purpose, by the way. All these people that had an alternative, no. They really, really, really did make that mistake. And there's been a number of case studies of how they made that mistake. But they internally made that mistake. And fortunately for them, there were upsides to making a mistake. Okay. All right, we have Professor Veronica. Sorry, Veronica, that was bad. I'm tired. This is our last question of the session. How do marketers find the brand association map helpful? How is this information collected and placed on a map? So let's do a perfect example. Let's talk about cars, because I like cars, right? So let's do our axes as high quality and low quality. So high quality, low quality, and then our other axis, low price, high price. And we really want to talk about just the luxury sedan marketplace. Okay. Now, Can someone tell me the difference between a BMW, an Audi, and a Mercedes? Now, BMW always did their unique positioning as, okay, we're more sporty than Mercedes. Mercedes is more luxury that has some sport to it, but that's like some special model. But if you really want sport and handling, BMW, the ultimate driving machine. And Mercedes, I can't remember what their thing was. You just knew you were getting a really good car, and it was very luxurious. Okay? So then, how is Audi different than BMW and Mercedes? Well, Audi's like, okay, we're going to be incredibly sporty, but a better value than BMW. And pretty much every Audi is $5,000 cheaper than a BMW, or $10,000 cheaper than the same BMW. That's it. If we looked at price and quality, and we looked at, we would be able to map BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, and they would probably have unique price points. Literally take that $35,000 to $85,000. There's your axis, $35,000 to $85,000. And then we look at quality. Then there you go. We can take the J.D. Powers, not J.D. Powers. We can take the, look at that, Consumer Reports ratings for Audi, Mercedes, and BMW, and use that as our quality metric. And that's on a scale from 1 to 100. And we can take our price, $35,000 to $85,000 price point, and then there's our two axes where we can do the map. Then all of a sudden, we might find holes in the marketplace where either price point wise or quality wise, there's a space that we could have a unique position in the marketplace. And the only way to do that is to map it. I think a visual is also very helpful in telling consumers. It helps energize the corporations. Like, okay, let's take the water market. Okay, the water market's ridiculous. It's water. It's crazy. But you can talk about price, because there's low-priced water and high-priced water. Fiji, right? There's some of those other really tall bottles. There's carbonated water. But then you could talk about flavor. Zero flavor, and then flavored waters. And if you didn't have that map, it would hard to be able to place the Propels of the world and some of these other waters of the world, because there wasn't an axis there for flavor, and that the mapping helps us sort out the competitive marketplace of where the competition is. And once we see where the competition is, it's easier for us to make a USP to signal to the consumers how we're different. Let's go back to the luxury car market example, right? BMW, Audi, and Mercedes are pretty easy to sort out. But what's a Cadillac? Worse, what's a Lincoln? What the heck is a Lincoln? You don't have a mental shortcut in your head for Lincoln, other than Matthew McConaughey. At least you have that. One of the students did a very good topic talk with Volvo. Volvo's becoming more electric, and they're repositioning themselves to being environmentally friendly. Volvo disappeared from the consciousness of consumers for the better part of 2 decades. They had a lot of issues. There was a lot of, there's a whole reason why that happened. They were purchased by a Japanese company, I'm going to say about 8 years ago. They're still made in Northern Europe, even though they're owned by a Chinese company. The Chinese company that's purchasing them already is doing electric vehicles in China. So they're bringing that technology over to Volvo, and they're going to reposition the entire brand to be an electric brand, more similar to what a Tesla is. Is that going to be enough? I hope. But 30 years ago, Volvo, safety, that's it. Volvo safety. They had a unique selling proposition. And then over time, everybody else's quality became just as good as Volvo. Volvo had nothing else other than safety. Then guess what? Everybody had the same quality, the same safety. Then what's a Volvo? That's why we have to continually reposition. Okay, class. I really appreciate the questions. The questions are a lot of fun. Please send me more questions for this week's module, and I will answer them next week. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace out.